There's said to have been direct talks between Mikel Arteta and the player himself. So what can you tell us about the Arsenal angle on this?
Yeah, so what Arsenal have sort of sat in the corner and just quietly had their hand up while Barca and Atleti have just sort of, have gone at each other over the whole summer. And they've kind of got an ace in the pack here, which is Andrea Berta, the sporting director, because of course he had the same role at Atletico Madrid. He worked there for I think it was 11 or 12 years, and he negotiated the contract that brought Alvarez to Atleti in the first place. So no one knows that contract better than he does. He's obviously got a prior relationship, therefore, with the player and with the player's representatives, and clearly the club itself. So he's quietly been doing the work on this. We actually broke the interest in Alvarez, in Arsenal's interest in Alvarez, back in January. And since then, they've just steadily been in the background trying to play a very sort of delicate role, which is everybody knows Atletico don't want to sell him. And Alvarez has since kind of made it quite clear he wants to go to Barcelona. So you'd think, ostensibly, there's no chance of them doing the deal because the club don't want to sell and the player doesn't necessarily want to go there. But as it's played out, and Barcelona have really riled Atletico, and they've responded so negatively towards them and been so publicly firm about not selling to Barcelona. As I say, Arsenal have just been in the corner in the background with their hand quietly up saying, we're here, we love you, we're happy to pay the market price. My understanding is they are prepared to break their club record fee to try and sign him, which is currently £105 million for Declan Rice. Now, if Alvarez really wants to get out and go anywhere, then it's going to be difficult for Atletico to turn down, 115, 120, 125? I don't know exactly what the price would be, but it would be hard to turn that money down. But Arsenal are in a situation where they need some encouragement in these final few days from either the club or the player to say we can do a deal. Because I think if they get that, this could actually move quite quickly. But from what we're told, Alvarez is quite reluctant about coming back to the Premier League. As I say, we all know he wants to go to Barcelona. But if Atletico completely shut that door, but say, actually, as we were talking about with Enzo Fernandez earlier, do we keep a player who really doesn't want to be here? He's torched his reputation with the fans to some extent. We've seen that in the La Liga game at the weekend. Of course, he scores a few goals and that'll go away. But they may think there's a circumstance here where actually maybe selling to Arsenal is the best course of action. And the other thing I'd just throw in the mix, and maybe this doesn't work, and I don't know what Craig would think about this, but maybe Alvarez might think the way I get to Barcelona is to go to Arsenal. And I go to Arsenal for a year or 18 months or a couple of years, and then I get to go to Barcelona. He's 26. He's got a bit of time on his side. Of course, this would play out if he was a little bit younger. But I do wonder whether and I have no information to this, but I wonder whether even Arsenal could sell that to him and say, look, come to us, give us a couple of years, win the Champions League with us, and then you can go and get your dream move. Just a thought.
I think that's how Arsenal would have to sell it to him, really. Because he has got his heart set on going to Barcelona, and the club, his employer, have been steadfast in saying no way. So if he really wants out of that club, and it's been too vitriolic now, I think it's gone too far. You can always heal it with a few goals, but it'll never really go away. You got your car parked to get your car, and they're waiting on you, they're abusing you. It never really goes away once you take this stance. The problem here is when you're selling that move a couple of years down the line is things change. Things change at Barcelona. Hansi Flick may no longer be in the job. Things could change on the sporting front with Deco. So you're always taking that risk. But if you can't get this move to Barca directly pushed through, you may have to take your second option. Now, the concern here for Arsenal would be you're spending a lot of money on a player whose first port of call is not you. That's, what you really want when you sign a player is a player who's desperate to come. And clearly, whilst Arsenal are a great club and a successful team, and they are absolutely going in the right direction, is that ultimately the player, he's their second option. And so, are you getting the player that's got the desire and the desperation that he would have if he goes to Barcelona? There's a lot of nuances within this move that are a bit of a mess, I have to say. But if Arsenal could get him, on the premise that James was talking about, with a clause in the contract or whatever it is, that if Barca come back in a year's time, we will honour that move. That could be a way of them getting a very good player into the squad, which will make them even more stronger favourites for the Premier League, which they already are. And it gets him out of a club where clearly he's unhappy and the club are unhappy with him. So it's every day just seems more of a mess. And I just hope for his sake that it all gets sorted out in an amicable way.
Yeah, so that might be an in at Arsenal. We'll wait and see. But on the way out at Arsenal is Gabriel Martinelli, James.
Yeah, been told by Arteta and the senior executives that he's essentially surplus to requirements this season. It's sort of been quite significant. I think that he's not been part of the matchday squad for either the Community Shield winner over Manchester City in Cardiff or the opening Premier League win against Coventry. And Max Downman, look, he's a fantastic talent, but you know, when you're not getting in ahead of a kid who's just got his GCSE results, it's not a great position to be in. And Martinelli, look, I think his career's kind of stalled really. And I think, as Craig was talking about earlier, it would be something of a shame, I think, if he went to Saudi Arabia. I'd like to see him try and revive his career in a sort of better league, a better quality league. But he's just reached a point, I think, where Arsenal have moved on beyond him. His decision making he's incredibly frustrating as a player who's watched him a lot. He's a very, he creates the opportunities through his pace and his speed of thought that he then wastes, and it's that kind of frustration. He almost brings it on himself because he's very dynamic. His acceleration is ferocious, and then he gets into these positions and then he tends to make the wrong decision, or he's not quite clinical enough when he's in front of goal. And Mikel Arteta's been quite open about how he wants to improve that forward line. And look, also we're talking about clubs spending money. Arsenal spent an awful lot of money in the last 3 or 4 years to get themselves into the position that they have, and they need to recoup some of that. I think they've seen some of the other clubs moving towards, as we're talking about, Villa sort of trading models where there are just more transactions. My information has always been that they were going to move a little bit towards that this summer. A record sale remains Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain to Liverpool all those years ago. I can't even remember when that was now, 2017, 16, 17, something like that, which is 35 million. So I think they're quite pleased to be finally getting some Saudi cash because they've had their hand up for quite a long time. I remember, funnily enough, I remember being in a briefing once with one of the executives at Arsenal who had pretty much said, somebody had said to him, why are Arsenal not getting any players to move to Saudi? Why is the Saudi interest not coming to the Emirates? And they sort of said, not for the want of trying, as if to sort of say, and I think they had done this, I think they'd actually gone out to meet some of the execs at the clubs in Saudi Arabia to sort of say, hello, we have players too. We're happy to get some of these marked up transfer fees if you're interested. So I think the fact that they're presumably close and that deal will go through now, I think they're finally going to get one over the line, and as I say, smash their own record sale in the process is a good thing for them. And in the same way, when we were talking about the Alvarez situation where it feels like there's no good way out now, whatever happens, somebody's going to be disappointed. If he goes to Barcelona, Atletico will be furious. If he goes to Arsenal, they've lost a great player. If he stays, that could be a very toxic situation. I think Martinelli leaving is actually now the best thing for everybody. I think he just needs to go and revive himself and hopefully resume the upward trajectory in his career.
Just to backtrack a little bit, James. The Alvarez situation with Arsenal, there's no desperation from Arsenal in terms of if the deal gets done or the deal doesn't get done, or is this because they're not quite sure about Gyökeres, Havertz, blah, 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 and they feel they need to go to that next level, be it Champions League final, that they feel they need that extra player?
Yeah, I always go back to straight after the Champions League final defeat to PSG. I asked Arteta a fairly mundane question, to be honest, about what he was going to do over the next few days, or how they were going to process it, just what the next few days looked like. And he sort of lucked into this really good answer where he just talked about how we need to show ambition in the market and we need to be quick and decisive and dynamic and all this sort of stuff. And we sort of came out of it thinking, I think that's a bit of a message to people upstairs there and to the supporters to sort of say, we're not going to rest on our laurels here. And everything I've heard since then has been that comment was about the forward line, was that they know they need a little bit of stardust up front. You know, let's not forget that they bought Gyökeres in last summer as an upgrade on Havertz. And yet what happened when both players were fit at the end of last season? Kai Havertz is starting. He's starting the big games. He starts the Champions League final. And significantly, he starts the Community Shield. He starts the opening weekend of the season. I just, you know, we could have a debate about whether Gyökeres is good enough. I don't want to do him down too much because I think he's a good lad who works hard and he has some quality. But they build him as like the number 9 who's going to win them the title. And okay, they won the league. But he's not that. I don't think he is that. I don't think he's the number 9 who really can be the main man and take them to sort of years of sustained success. And I think they know that too. I think they know that they'll be content, I think, if they go into the season without signing Julian Alvarez. But look, as I say, they've positioned themselves to say, right, if we can get him over the line, he is the absolute game changer. If we don't, we won the title with Gyökeres, with Havertz, with Mikel Merino, actually did a pretty good job up there once again as a sort of makeshift centre forward and showed again at the World Cup, you know, how good he can be. I think they'll feel they're confident enough to give it another go with that. And something that they have shown in the market actually is they've been prepared to wait for players rather than just sort of panic buy. So I think they'll feel maybe they could get him next summer if they can't get it over the line this summer. But look, cards on the table, if they could get him, they would want to get him now because they know what a transformative signing he could be, I think.
Good stuff. Nice stuff. Thank you, James. Yes, stay up to date with all the latest transfer talk over on our website and stay up to date with the whole Julian Alvarez saga and see how that plays out.